The law of the wild strikes without warning. Milo tumbled through tall grass, chasing shadows that danced in the wind, unaware of the danger nearby. Grace whispered, "Stay close, little one." The air shifted, carrying a sharp metallic scent that froze her breath. Dane slinked at the edge of the clearing, his eyes gleaming with hunger. Milo laughed in a soft cub's growl, unaware of the predator who had already chosen him. Grace growled low, her chest rumbling like thunder. The grass swayed violently as silence pressed against their ears. Milo said, "Why does the wind smell strange?" Grace answered, "Because death walks with it." Dane stepped closer, teeth flashing white in the fading sun. The land itself seemed to hush, as if it too feared what was about to happen. Milo rolled onto his back, batting at the sky with tiny paws, while Grace's eyes remained fixed on the shadows. She said, "You play while the world sharpens its teeth." The Savannah whispered with restless silence. Dane waited, patience etched in every twitch of his tail. Milo chirped, "The wind tickles me." Grace pressed her paw over him, grounding him. The scent of blood thickened, not from them, but from some distant kill carried on the air. Yet predators never stray far from its promise. Dane growled faintly, his voice lost beneath the rustle of grass. Grace knew the cub's innocence was a beacon of weakness. She whispered, "Stay still, and you may live." The world felt as though it balanced on a single breath. The silence broke as vultures circled overhead, their wings cutting through the sky with cruel rhythm. Milo pointed upward with his paw. Birds dance in circles. Grace snarled low, "They circle for death, not for play." Dane inched forward, unseen by the cub, but burning in the lioness' sight. The scent of blood thickened, carried by warm wind, heavy with dread. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows like spears through the savannah. Milo licked Grace's nose, comforted though he did not know why fear gripped her heart. She whispered, "Do not stray, no matter what you hear." Dane's patience was a weapon sharpened by hunger. He waited for darkness to lend him cover. The wind surged, bending grass like waves. Milo laughed, "The earth dances with me." Grace hissed softly, her muscles taut, her tail stiff like a spear. Dane crept closer, shadows clinging to him as though they wanted him hidden. The vultures cried above, their screeches painting death into the sky. Grace pressed her body lower, ready to spring if needed, but torn between protecting and fleeing. Milo pawed at her ear, unaware of the storm about to break. "Why are you afraid, mother?" he whispered. Grace said, "Because I know what hunts us." Dane's grin widened, his teeth gleaming, as hunger reached its breaking point. Darkness began to spread across the savannah. Milo curled against Grace's chest, his small body rising with her sharp breaths. She whispered, "Sleep waits, but danger does not." Dane paused, his eyes glowing like embers in fading light. The scent of blood thickened until it coated every breath. Milo said softly, "It smells heavy." Grace licked his head, her voice trembling, "That smell is death's hand reaching." Dane lowered his body to the ground, muscles rippling as he prepared. The vultures grew restless, circling tighter, their cries echoing the weight of fate. Grace pressed closer to Milo, her heart pounding like a drum of war. The first act of survival had already begun. The night stretched heavy, and Grace curled around Milo, her breath steady, but her heart restless. She whispered, "You are my heartbeat, little one." Milo yawned, pressing closer, his innocence blinding him to the dangers waiting in shadows. The stars glittered above, cold witnesses to their fragile bond. Grace thought of the days when she too was a cub, shielded by her mother's warmth. "Do you dream of running free?" Milo asked sleepily. Grace licked his ear. "I dream of you living long enough to run." Dane lingered still, but his hunger now met the immovable wall of a mother's devotion. The savannah hushed, as if pausing to honor her vow. Morning broke with pale light spilling across the grasslands. Milo bounded ahead, his paws clumsy, his joy unbroken by the night's fear. Grace followed close, her steps measured, her eyes never resting. She murmured, Every step you take, I take with you. Milo laughed. Then we will never be apart. A breeze rustled through the grass, carrying scents of earth and life. Grace felt the weight of her role. She was the shield against a world built to consume him. The cub's spirit made the morning glow brighter, but for Grace it sharpened the cost of loss. She said softly, "The world is cruel, but I will be crueler if it dares touch you." The sun climbed higher, and Milo paused near a small stream, pawing at the shimmering surface. He said, "The water plays with me." Grace lowered her head, drinking slowly, ears twitching at distant sounds. Her voice carried low, "The water gives life, but it also hides death." Milo giggled, splashing droplets, his reflection breaking into ripples. Grace's eyes locked on shadows beyond the bank, tension never leaving her body. She pressed against him, whispering, "Even joy can be stolen in a heartbeat." The cub nuzzled her neck, unaware that predators also drank from these streams, waiting for weakness. Her love wrapped him like armor, though it was thin against the weight of nature. By noon, heat pressed down, waves shimmering above the ground. Milo lay sprawled in the shade of an acacia tree, panting softly. Grace rested near, her golden fur glistening with sweat, but her eyes never closed. She said, "The sun may burn, but it cannot harm us here." Milo replied, "It feels like fire on my back." She chuckled softly, "Fire teaches respect." Yet, even in stillness, danger was near. The grass swayed unnaturally once, and her muscles tensed instantly. She pressed her paw gently against his side, reminding him silently of her watch. The bond between them was an unspoken promise. Her life would break before his did. As evening approached, long shadows stretched like claws across the earth. Milo sat upright, watching fireflies spark in the dimming light. He said, "The stars come down to dance with me." Grace rested her chin across his back, whispering, "They come to remind us we are small, but not alone." The Savannah softened under twilight, but the stillness carried danger. Dane prowled unseen, his patience sharpening like a blade. Grace pressed closer, her warmth surrounding Milo's fragile frame. "Never forget, you are the piece of me the world cannot take," she murmured. The emotional bond anchored them both, even as survival waited to test its strength. Storm clouds gathered over the horizon, rolling like dark mountains across the sky. Milo bounded after a grasshopper, his laughter echoing, blind to the shifting air. Grace hissed, "Stay close. Danger stirs." The cub ignored her warning, chasing joy instead of safety. Dane slinked nearer, his hunger sharpened by the cover of rising winds. Grace's body trembled, every sense aflame, yet Milo's innocence tied her in place. The storm was more than thunder. It was a drumbeat of fate closing in. Milo chirped, "The sky growls like me." Grace pressed him against her chest. "No, it growls like death." Rain began to fall, soft at first, then striking harder. Milo shook his head, droplets flying as he giggled. "The sky is playing too," he said. Grace pushed him forward, her body shielding him from the storm. "No, the sky tests us," she replied. Dane crept closer, hidden by tall, drenched grass. His grin widened with each flash of lightning, each rumble of thunder that masked his steps. Milo stumbled, the mud soft beneath his paws. Grace urged, "Keep moving, little one." The storm's rage mirrored the predator's hunger, closing every escape path. Lightning split the sky, illuminating every shadow for an instant. Grace froze, her eyes catching Dane's shape in the blaze. Milo gasped. The sky showed a monster. Grace growled. It showed truth. Dane lunged forward, but halted when thunder shook the ground, his hunger battling with fear. Grace stepped back, pushing Milo behind her, her body ready to fight despite her trembling legs. Milo buried his head into her fur, whispering, "Don't let him take me." Grace whispered back, "He will take me first." Nature roared above, predator breathed below, and both pressed against their fragile survival. The storm softened into silence, but the air grew heavier. Milo's fur clung damp to his body, and he shivered against Grace. She whispered, "Fear is a lesson written on the skin." Dane circled wide, patient, waiting for weakness to show. Milo whimpered, "Why does he follow us?" Grace answered, "Because survival makes shadows hunt the light." Her stomach twisted, hunger gnawing, her strength fading. Yet she forced her body to stand tall. Dane laughed under his breath, a sound sharper than the crack of lightning. Every step he took narrowed their world. Night fell quickly after the storm, heavy clouds smothering the stars. Grace pressed Milo into a hollow of grass, whispering, "Hide, breathe only when I breathe." He whimpered, "But I'm afraid." She nuzzled his ear, "Then be afraid with me, but stay." Dane crept closer, his eyes glowing in the dark, hunger unbroken by the storm. Grace crouched low, her body a shield between predator and cub. The world felt smaller with each passing second, shadows swallowing space. Milo whispered, "Will we live?" Grace whispered back, "We will fight, and that must be enough." The night silence fractured as Dane halted his hunt, his ears twitching at cries from beyond the savannah. Milo whispered. He stopped. "Why?" Grace's eyes narrowed. She could smell something different, fear, but not theirs. From the far brush came faint whimpers, smaller than Milo's voice. Dane hesitated, torn between hunger and recognition. Grace murmured, "The hunter has a burden too." Milo tilted his head, confused, but Grace's heart knew truth. Dane was not only predator, he was father. Another cry rose, weak and broken, echoing the struggles they shared. The savannah had no villains, only survivors marked by need. The cries grew louder, trembling in the wind. Milo whispered, "Another cub calls." Grace pressed her paw gently over him. "Yes, but not ours." Dane turned fully, his body no longer a shadow of hunger, but a frame trembling with conflict. His eyes glowed with something more than hunger, duty. Grace growled, her chest heavy, yet deep inside she understood. "Even shadows guard their own light," she murmured. Milo said, "Does he love them like you love me?" Grace answered softly, "Yes, love lives even in teeth that tear." The truth shattered the shape of fear. From the brush staggered a small hyena pup, ribs visible, fur damp, whimpering for comfort. Dane rushed forward, abandoning the hunt. Milo gasped, "He protects too." Grace lowered her head, realization heavy on her shoulders. She whispered, "We are all bound by the same chains." The predator was also prey to starvation, to love, to the weight of survival. Dane nudged his pup gently, his growl soft and protective. Milo whispered, "He is like you." Grace's eyes softened, but the savannah did not. For truth was cruel. There was no mercy, only parallel struggles. The savannah seemed to breathe differently as predator and prey paused their endless war. Grace whispered to Milo, "The world wears masks. Today we saw beneath one." Milo's eyes gleamed, wide with wonder, not fear. Dane curled protectively around his pup, his body hunched, ribs straining against skin, hunger gnawing even in love's shadow. Grace knew the truth cut deeper. Survival did not belong to enemies or allies, it belonged to whoever endured. Milo whispered, "He is like us." Grace sighed, "Yes, even teeth carry love." But the moment of peace was fragile, for the savannah never paused long. The truth struck Milo's heart like thunder. Predators were not monsters, but mirrors. He whispered, "If he has a family, will he leave us?" Grace pressed her muzzle to his head, whispering, "He may, but only because his love weighs heavier than his hunger." Dane lifted his pup, eyes still locked with Grace, their bond forged not by peace but by understanding. The savannah exhaled, its silence no longer suffocating but solemn. Milo's chest swelled with fragile hope. Grace whispered, "The world is not cruel, nor kind, it is only true." And truth was the most dangerous predator of all. The air grew sharp with hunger, as silence fractured under the cries of vultures above. Milo pressed closer to Grace, whispering, "Will he come back?" Grace lowered her head. Danger never leaves, it only waits. Dane lingered on the horizon, torn between love and hunger, his frail pup clinging to his side. Grace's ribs ached with emptiness. Her body screamed for food, yet her heart screamed louder for her cub. The savannah shifted again, new shapes moving in the shadows. Hyenas, not one but many, emerged, drawn by scent and storm. Milo gasped, "There are more." Grace bristled. "Yes, the hunt begins." Hyena laughter cracked across the night, sharp and cruel. Milo flinched, whispering, "They laugh at us." Grace snarled, "They laugh at fear, not at strength." Dane stood divided, but the pack's hunger drowned his silence. The largest hyena lunged forward, his teeth flashing. Grace roared, her body surging into battle. Milo cried, "No, stay with me." Grace growled, "I fight so you may breathe." Her claws struck dirt as she clashed with teeth in the dark. Dust rose, lit by faint moonlight, as predator and mother collided. The savannah thundered with the sound of survival's cost. The clash was brutal, blood scattering into the night. Grace snapped her jaws around the foreleg of one hyena, forcing him to yelp. Milo cried, "Mother!" Her roar split the air, shaking the grass itself. Another hyena struck her flank, ripping fur and flesh. She staggered, but did not fall. Dane growled, stepping forward, torn between pack and pup. Grace's eyes burned, daring him to choose. Milo whimpered, "Please don't leave me." Grace hissed, "I will never leave you." Every strike of claw and tooth carved survival's law deeper. The climax of their struggle had begun. Pain surged through Grace's body, but her roar grew louder. Milo cried, "You are bleeding." She answered, "Blood is the price of love." Dane lunged at last, not at Grace, but at his own kin. His teeth tore into the flank of a rival hyena, his loyalty shattered by the echo of his pup's cry. The pack screamed in fury, chaos ripping across the savannah. Milo gasped, "He fights for us." Grace locked eyes with Dane, a silent pact forged in violence. Together they faced the storm, predator and prey no longer bound by roles, only by survival's demand. The night's climax exploded in a storm of claws, roars, and blood. Grace staggered but stood tall, her body a fortress. Milo cried, "Don't fall." She snarled, "I will stand until the last breath." Dane fought savagely, his pup hidden behind him, his betrayal of the pack absolute. Rival hyenas circled, some wounded, some enraged, their laughter now screams of fury. The savannah shook with the weight of survival's war. Grace and Dane, predator and mother, stood back to back, united only by love's anchor. Milo's heart pounded as he whispered, "We will not die tonight." The battlefield fell silent, except for ragged breaths. Grace stood trembling, her flank torn, blood streaking her golden fur. Milo pressed against her leg, whispering, "You're still here." She lowered her head, voice weak but steady, "I promised I would be." Dane limped nearby, his pup clinging to his side, both alive, but battered. The rival hyenas had scattered into the dark, their laughter replaced by silence. The savannah felt heavy, every blade of grass carrying the weight of the fight. Grace exhaled, "We endured." Her voice carried both victory and loss, for survival always demanded its price. The vultures circled closer, waiting to claim the fallen. Milo shivered, whispering, "They watch us." Grace replied, "They watch everything." Dane collapsed onto his side, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths, his pup pawing weakly at his face. Grace turned her gaze toward him, eyes soft, despite her exhaustion. She said, "Even shadows bleed for what they love." Milo whispered, "Then he is not our enemy." Grace pressed her paw over him gently. "No, he is a mirror." The savannah accepted the truth with silence, its judgment final. Dawn crept across the savannah, painting the grass in pale gold. Grace lay on her side, her breath shallow, wounds burning. Milo nestled against her, whispering, "The sun came back for us." She whispered, The sun always returns, even after storms. Dane lifted his head weakly, his pup nestled into his chest. He looked at Grace, and for the first time his gaze carried no hunger, only acknowledgement. Milo whispered, "He will leave us now." Grace nodded, because love binds him elsewhere. The new day rose, heavy with scars but alive. Milo licked Grace's wounds gently, his small tongue tracing over torn fur. "Does it hurt?" he whispered. Grace smiled faintly. "It hurts, but you make me forget." Dane rose unsteadily, his pup stumbling beside him, their shadows long in the morning light. For a heartbeat, predator and mother locked eyes once more. No words were spoken, but the truth echoed between them. Survival had carved them into kin, if only for a moment. Milo whispered, "He's leaving." Grace answered, "Yes, because he must." The silence between them was not hostility, but respect forged by suffering. The sun climbed higher, casting brilliance across the savannah. Grace whispered, "The world takes, but it also leaves enough to begin again." Milo pressed his face into her neck, whispering, "Then we will live." She answered softly, "Yes, because we must." Dane disappeared into the horizon, his pup stumbling by his side, their survival uncertain but their bond undeniable. Grace closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself one breath of peace. Milo whispered, "We are still here." The savannah roared silently, declaring its verdict. Survival was not victory, only continuation. The savannah awoke with a hush, the kind of silence that follows storms and bloodshed, carrying the weight of memory in every blade of grass. Milo sat, pressed close to Grace, his small body trembling less now, though his wide eyes remained heavy with questions that his young heart did not yet know how to form. Grace whispered, her voice low, almost lost in the vastness around them, "Every scar you see on me, every drop of blood, is proof we endure." Her words were steady, yet beneath them trembled the exhaustion of one who had fought too much, too long. The battlefield was etched in dust and trampled soil, reminders of tooth and claw where survival had been waged. Milo lifted his face to her, whispering, "But the sky feels calm now." Grace lowered her muzzle until their eyes met, her gaze carrying the truth that only the old and wounded could bear. "Calm," she said, "is never a gift, only the pause between storms." In her voice was both warning and comfort, a promise that though peace was fleeting, her love would always be the shield against the next darkness. A breeze moved through the grass, carrying with it scents of wet soil, ash, and renewal, as though the earth itself breathed out its long-held grief. Milo tilted his head, his whiskers trembling as he inhaled, and he whispered, "The wind does not smell like death anymore." Grace turned her scarred face toward him, her voice soft, yet edged with truth sharpened by years. "Not today, but death will return, because it always does." She leaned down, brushing her muzzle across the cub's head, her touch tender despite the raw pain searing her wounds. Above them a hawk glided silently, wings stretched wide, circling not as a scavenger but as a sentinel. Milo's eyes followed its flight, his voice filled with awe. "Does it watch us?" Grace answered, "Yes, and it reminds us that every creature is seen, no matter how small, no matter how broken." Her words carried into the silence, planting seeds of strength in Milo's fragile heart, a strength forged from scars and storms endured. The world stretched wide and endless before them, a canvas of golden grass shimmering in sunlight, vast yet intimate in its silence. Milo's eyes gleamed as he whispered, "The earth breathes with us." Grace's reply was steady, though her voice carried the burden of knowledge too heavy for innocence. "Yes, and it will breathe long after we are gone." Her words hung in the air, not to frighten but to anchor him in truth. Insects stirred, buzzing faintly in the warmth of dawn, reclaiming a land that hours before had known only blood and fear. Milo pressed his small head against her scarred side, whispering, "But for now, we stay." Grace closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her weary heart. She murmured, "For now, yes, that is enough." Their survival was fragile, temporary, yet it carried the weight of eternity, because every breath defied the fate that sought to erase them. The horizon burned brighter, a fiery canvas where shadows fled from the rising sun. Milo lifted his gaze toward it, his young voice carrying fragile hope. Will tomorrow be safe? Grace's eyes softened, though her words were sharpened by reality. Tomorrow will be what it must. But you will not face it alone. Their bond glimmered brighter than the dawn itself, fragile yet unbreakable, a promise born of blood and storms. Dane was gone, his frail pup stumbling at his side, their figures fading into distance, but their shadow lingered in memory. Milo whispered, "Even enemies have families." Grace bowed her head, whispering, "In the Savannah, no one is only enemy, no one only friend. We are all threads in the same endless weave." The sun climbed higher, stretching their shadows long across the grass, reminding them that survival was not triumph, but the right to walk another day. The Savannah hushed, holding its breath as though the earth itself waited for a final word. Milo pressed close to Grace, his voice trembling yet curious. "What will they remember of us?" Grace's gaze turned toward the horizon, her eyes fierce despite exhaustion. Her voice fell into a whisper sharp as stone. "They will remember that we live." The wind caught her words, carrying them far beyond their hollow, weaving them into the grass, the sky, the endless plain. Milo pressed tighter into her side, his heart thundering not from fear, but from the fragile defiance that comes with surviving. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the echo of her vow. Her eyes closed, not in defeat but in defiance, her body scarred yet unbroken. Milo lifted his gaze, small yet resolute, a spark against the vastness of fate. The final echo lingered, not victory, not loss, but survival itself, carved eternal into the land.